Peace, Jumbo. Welcome to the Vital Hoops podcast, right here on Black Power Media Reloaded. My name is Fernando Cardenas, aka International XB. I am your host. This is episode 100. Today's the date. We're closing out season 1 of the Vital Hoops podcast. 100 episodes. So I recorded episode 1 in March of 2022. So it's been 4 years. 4 years, 100 episodes. It's been a beautiful thing. I have loved almost every second of it. I hope it has helped a lot of people. I know it has definitely helped a couple people, but I hope I've reached some brothers and sisters out there with this podcast. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Vital Hoops, why Vital Hoops. But first, I do want to thank all the guests, that came on the show. You know what I'm saying? Y'all definitely made Vital Hoops what it is. Y'all definitely made this podcast live and, colorful and revolutionary. And I give thanks for that. You know what I'm saying? Definitely. And I want to thank, obviously, all the people that have been watching, have been listening, have been sharing, have been wrestling with ideas through hearing and learning from this podcast. But like I said, I give thanks. I'm very humble, very appreciative for everything. And it's not over. There will be a season 2, but it's the end of season 1. So why Vital Hoops? I came up with Vital Hoops during COVID while I was in Cuba and Havana with my wife and children. At one point, we didn't know if we were ever going to get through the pandemic, to be honest. And I knew I wanted to create a brand, but more than a brand, something that represents who I am. I knew I wanted to create a podcast in order to express myself, in order to, as an MC, I already do that through music, but I wanted another way because I myself enjoyed listening to podcasts. I learned a lot from them, and I thought I had something to say and something to share, some knowledge to share and something to learn as well from all the people I knew and all the people I wanted to meet through this journey. So why Vital Hoops? First of all, vital to me comes from Ital, Ital Livity, in Rastafari culture. Ital is what comes from the ground. Okay, so it's natural living, natural eating, right? Ital food is natural food, things that come from the ground, that give us life, that give us strength, right? So that's where that came from. And Ital is vital, right? And so hoops, obviously, for basketball, because as you know, Vital Hoops is about more than just basketball, but basketball was my first love. Basketball, outside of my parents and my family, basketball was what first made my heart go fast, when I was a little kid, when I was a young boy. So like I said, Vital Hoops is about more than hoops. It's about everything that's a part of my life and my culture. So like I said, basketball, Pan-Africanism, hip hop, health and wellness, and veganism, even though veganism to me goes into health and wellness, but it doesn't have to necessarily. So I already said basketball was my first love, you know what I'm saying? And to me, my journey of life, you know what I'm saying, to understanding who I am and where I stand, you know, as a child of the African diaspora in this world. To me, it all began, like I said, playing street ball and listening to hip hop music. That's where it all began. Playing street ball literally in the street in Havana outside of my house, you know. And so hip hop has been a part of my life ever since very young. Hip hop was the music that ball players were listening to. All the basketball players that I looked up to, that's how I got into hip hop. They were listening to rap tapes. Back then, it was Tupac, Coolio, Biggie, the Wu-Tang. And that's how I began, just listening to rap. And then little by little, I got into the culture. I got into the elements. I started writing. I started understanding how hip hop was more than just music. Um, Health and wellness has always been a part of my life as well, because ever since I started taking basketball seriously, I understood that fitness and well-being was key to me if I wanted to be a basketball player for real, if I wanted to take it to a next level. So I started incorporating, started making sure I was in top tier shape ever since I was very young, and I understood the importance of watching what I ate, and getting my sleep and all of that. So I've always kind of been on top of that, even though, I obviously didn't know as much as I know today, but I've always enjoyed fitness. I've always enjoyed taking care of my body to a certain extent up to now, where I'm a health and wellness coach. So that's that. Veganism to me, I grew up eating meat, but two of my brothers were vegetarians, you know what I'm saying? They were influenced by Rastafari culture and they were vegetarians. And I always was, intrigued by that side. And, little by little, like I said, through understanding healthy eating and all that, I started cutting out meat. First of all, I cut out pork, thanks to Malcolm X, reading Malcolm. Then I stopped eating all red meat, due to understanding what it did to your body. And then, it kind of went little by little. And then at some point, my wife and I became fully vegan in 2016. And it has been a beautiful journey and a great decision. But that was also a decision that had to do for me. It had to do with hip hop. It had to do with Rastafari, Ital living. It had to do with, hip hop, Dead Prez saying be healthy, and KRS-One talking about meat and learning that the RZA was a vegan, and learning about Dick Gregory and Angela Davis and all of that. So, that's how that came about. And Pan-Africanism, I've always been a Pan-Africanist, even though I didn't grow up in a Pan-Africanist household. I've always been a Pan-Africanist at heart, but I've just always really hated oppression, and I've always really loved my people. And once I started understanding, getting political education and understanding what time it was, it was only a natural, uh, we could call it transition to me. You know what I'm saying? So again, hearing about certain things in hip hop music helped me understand, before even reading all the books and joining organizations and organizing and being an activist. Before all that, just hearing things in the music, you know. So that's why I always say, everything is connected to me, everything that I do, and understanding that this podcast is not my job. I understood that I had to make it, if I wanted to be consistent, it had to be about more than just one thing, you know. And, we human beings, that's the way we are. Nobody just does one thing, you know what I'm saying? So if I wanted to be authentic, if I wanted to be myself, I had to make it this way. So this is it. This is what Vada Hoops is about, and this is what the Vada Hoops podcast is about. So like I said, I'm proud of myself for 100 episodes, and thank you all for supporting. And before I go, I do have something to say today on this 100th episode to close out this season. Unfortunately, we live in a world of oppression, and today it's somewhat easier to see and easier to understand, but it doesn't mean that people are seeing it for what it is. There's still a lot of people out there that have crazy ideologies, people that are completely lost, that don't understand what's going on. And a lot of the times in today's age, when you're ignorant, it's because you choose to be. A lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the times. But nevertheless, it is true that a lot of people don't understand how the system of oppression, how this global system of white hegemony works. If you follow or if you listen to this show regularly, you probably already know my ideology. I'm a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. I believe in Africa for Africans at home and abroad. I believe in liberation for all living beings, including animals. That's part of why I'm a vegan. but I believe in liberation for all. And so I try to be aligned with my values. And so I don't support any type of oppression at all. And we know what time it is. Obviously, like I said, a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, that's anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist, you know, race first, all of that. But one of the issues that I have with some of people that call themselves revolutionaries today is that sometimes they pick and choose which oppressions to be against. And I feel like some people hate the enemy more than they love the people. And I think that's a problem personally. I think there's so much oppression in the world today that sometimes some oppressed people have the power to oppress other oppressed people. But too many times we choose not to speak up when this happens because we believe that, we'll sort that out later. We have to fight our big enemy first. And I think that's a mistake. I think we have to handle it all at the same time. We have to speak up against all oppression now. Because what happens when we've seen it throughout history is that we let it go for now, and then people end up being in powerful places and they end up reproducing oppression. They end up doing the same thing over and over and over. And so I believe we have to speak up against all oppression at all times. It doesn't mean everybody has to be on everything. Obviously, that's impossible. But there's too much silence sometimes, too much silence about things that are happening around the world because we're afraid that if we speak up on this oppression, that we're going to help imperialism or we're going to help the West. And you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I'm going to say this, a lot of people are not going to like this, but sometimes that's because we're too comfortable living in the West. We have running water, we have AC, we have heat, we have Netflix and internet, and we have food. And so we get a little too comfortable. But when you're living in the global South, or when you're living in some of these countries, not saying that people don't have it rough in the West. You understand what I'm saying? But when you're living in some of these countries where you can't go out the house and say what you believe, where you can't turn on the camera like I'm doing here and speak my mind out, it's another reality, you know. And I'm saying that while you don't have running water, you don't have electricity, you're not sure about where your next meal is coming from. You understand what I'm saying? So I say all this to say, let's call out all oppression. Let's call out all oppression. Let's burn down Babylon for real. White hegemony has spread. It has spread, and a lot of people are reproducing it. You know what I'm saying? Let's not be quiet for anybody. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to strengthen our enemy by speaking up against oppression anywhere. That's not how it works, in my opinion. So I'm going to respect some of the elders that think otherwise, but this is my opinion, and, I have to say it. So yes, Vital Hoops Podcast, Season 1. Thank you so much. Please look down in the description in order to see what's going on with me. Check out 340 MS. That's my hip hop group. You know what I'm saying? My cousin and I from Cuba. Shout out to my cousin AB. You can follow us on Instagram at 340 MS Hip Hop. There's a lot on that IG, a lot of information. We're working on new material, new music. Like I said, check us out at 340 MS Hip Hop for everything hip hop related with myself and 340 MS. Also, the BESE SAKA Afro Vegan Fest, 3rd edition, will be held this upcoming summer in Paris. One more time, make sure you follow us on Instagram at BESE SAKA Fest. And also, our brand new website is dropping real soon, so be ready for that. Follow our organization here in France at LPU France. Check out our website, lp-umoja.com. It's down in the description as well. If you love basketball, please check out Love by Vital Hoops. You can follow us on Instagram as well at Love by Vital Hoops. Some dope things coming real soon with that. And yeah, it's 100 episodes, so you can always go back. Episodes 1 through 62 are on a different channel on YouTube. They're also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then, 63 to 100 is available right here on Black Power Media. If you really want to support, get yourself a beautiful hoodie or a t-shirt, Vado Hoops /BPM merch. The link again is down in the description. It's revolutionary, Pan-African, and vegan. So get yourself some merch and tag us on the gram. #Vado Hoops or Vado Hoops Podcast. And you can follow me as well on Instagram at Coach Fernando Cardenas, and follow the podcast at Vado Hoops Podcast. Again, I want to thank everybody that has been a part of this from the beginning. Shout out to my brother Booba for creating the logo, for supporting from day one. Shout out to my man Kini for the intro. Shout out to Kalanji and Black Power Media. Shout out to everybody, man. It's too many to name, but I appreciate y'all. The struggle continues. Please hit me in the comments if you have anything. And don't be afraid to write me an email, vadohoopspodcast@gmail.com. Hit me up if you want to link up for anything. Season 2 is coming soon. Follow us for more information on that. We give thanks, always. Vado Hoops, for the people, by the people, for the culture. Uhuru.